the full killer. Hi everybody, I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show where we watch old 16mm films. That was from the Mogul Brothers collection, ultimately, which ended up with Orgone Archive. Mont Blanc. More than a pen, it's a full killer. Thanks for joining us today. Got lots of things to watch. Behind me, I have on the Cintel film scanner. Got a film set up. Let's learn about Diesel. The Diesel story. Enjoy.
Most of us, living means working. So to get the most out of life, men looked for a way of making machines do some of their work. Wind was one answer, but it was not always reliable. They turned to another form of energy, and discovering that heat could drive machines, they opened up a great new reservoir of reliable power. New industries were born and new towns built to serve them. The arrival of the heat engine changed the whole way of life for people in many parts of the world. The first practical heat engines were driven by steam. Fed on coal and water, they were the foundation of the new industrial age. Day and night they worked, pumping, driving, turning, consuming each day thousands of tons of coal. During the 19th century, coal was by far the best fuel available. It also yielded a valuable byproduct, gas for lighting and heating. But this gas was now used for another purpose, as a source of power in the so-called atmospheric gas engine patented by Otto and Langen in 1860. For years, men had been trying to do away with boilers and to burn fuel inside the cylinder. Now, coal gas made this possible. But these early internal combustion engines were temperamental, and their power output was too limited to challenge the power of the steam engine. It was not until 1877, when Otto adapted the principles of the four-stroke cycle theory of the French scientist Beau de Roche, that a really practical internal combustion engine was built. The Otto silent gas engine, as it was known, was the forerunner of all modern four-stroke engines. First stroke, induction. A mixture of gas and air is drawn into the cylinder. Second stroke, compression. Third stroke, power. The mixture is ignited and expands, driving the piston outwards. Fourth stroke, exhaust. With the discovery of petroleum, a new source of power was born, and the internal combustion engine developed rapidly. Similar in principle to the gas engine, the gasoline engine had the advantage of utilizing an easy-to-handle fuel. Thus, it was ideal for use in the motor car. In contrast to the gasoline engine, another type of internal combustion engine was built in 1890. Designed by Ackroyd Stewart, this machine was used for driving stationary power plants. It ran on a heavier petroleum fuel and was known as the hot bulb oil engine. The engine comprises a vaporizer, or hot bulb, from which the hot gases pass through a narrow passage into the working cylinder. In the cylinder is a piston joined by a connecting rod to the crankshaft and a heavy flywheel. Before starting, the vaporizer is heated by a blow lamp to high temperature. The flywheel is then turned over by hand. Pure air is sucked into the working cylinder and the oil fuel is sprayed into the hot bulb. During the second stroke, air and vaporized fuel are mixed together and compressed. The high temperature in the vaporizer causes combustion, and the piston is forced outward by the expanding gases. Finally, the burnt gases are expelled from the cylinder. Once the engine was running, the heat retained in the hot bulb was enough to ensure combustion, and the blow lamp was no longer necessary. These simple engines could run for long periods at a constant speed, and they gained a wide reputation for reliability. The 19th century saw enormous progress in the development of heat engines of all kinds, and towards its close, there were four main types in general use: the oil engine with hot bulb vaporizer, the steam engine, which was still considered supreme for a wide variety of uses, the gas engine for stationary power plants, and the rapidly improving gasoline engine. All these engines worked on the same basic principle of turning heat into work. But in each case, the amount of heat turned into work was small. The efficiency was low. 6% for the average steam engine, 10% for the oil engine, 17% for the gas engine, and 12% for the gasoline engine. Looking at these facts, Rudolf Diesel was certain that it should be possible to build an engine with a very much higher efficiency. From the start, he was convinced of four things. He must get away from the steam engine entirely. Combustion must take place inside the cylinder. Air, not steam, must be the working medium. And finally, the air must be highly compressed so as to permit the greatest possible expansion. He remembered the pneumatic match, or fire piston. A small cylinder, usually made of wood or glass, into which a closely fitting piston or plunger could be inserted. The head of the piston was recessed so as to hold a piece of dry tinder. When the air in the cylinder was highly compressed, it became so hot as to cause the tinder to ignite. The fire piston gave a clue to a practical means of securing combustion inside the cylinder: compression, ignition. Diesel adapted this principle to the internal combustion engine and described the cycle for the first time in 1892. A downward stroke of the piston. Pure air is sucked into the cylinder. The air is then compressed to the point where it reaches the temperature necessary for combustion. Fuel is introduced into the compressed air. Owing to the high temperature, it takes fire and produces heat, which is turned into work. During the fourth stroke, the spent gases are forced out of the cylinder. The first experimental engine was built at Augsburg in Germany during 1893. Most people were convinced that no machine would work at the high pressures which Diesel insisted were necessary for combustion and essential for high thermal efficiency.
Schluss, Riemen einrücken.
This engine never ran under its own power. One of the main problems facing diesel arose from the high pressures inside the cylinder. An exact quantity of oil fuel had to be sprayed finely and accurately through a dense wedge of compressed air. It was found that the fuel pump by itself could not do the job effectively. So an air pump was added, which could blow the fuel into the combustion chamber. The principle was similar to that of a perfume atomizer. The method was known as air blast injection. By 1894, a completely new and redesigned engine had been built, and preparations were complete for the first trial run.
Bestäubungsluft. Aufdrehen! Jawohl.
In spite of this setback, an all-important fact had been demonstrated. Compression ignition was a practical way of securing combustion, and an engine could be made to work on this cycle. By 1897, the first reliable engine had completed its tests. Limitations in engineering methods had made some modifications necessary. Nevertheless, the engine had an efficiency of 27%. Far higher than any other engine of the day. By the turn of the century, the diesel engine was in regular production. The first models built under license were large single-cylinder units with a maximum speed of less than 200 revolutions per minute. Manufacturers in various countries made some modifications to the original design, and a few horizontal engines were built. These were reminiscent of Ackroyd Stewart's earlier engine, but with much higher compression and no hot bulb. The diesel was ideal for driving electric generators. With the rapid expansion of electrical power, there was a demand for larger engines with more than one cylinder. With the development of more power, engineers soon realized that the diesel could be adapted for marine work. By 1912, the first ocean-going diesel ship had been built. The Selandia of 7,400 tons was built at Copenhagen by Burmeister and Wayne. Her maiden voyage to Bangkok created a sensation in the marine world and marked the beginning of a close association between the diesel engine and the sea. Within a few years, hundreds of new vessels fitted with these engines were to be launched from shipyards all over the world. Today, one ship in every 4 is diesel-driven. The success of the marine diesel was due partly to the adoption of the 2-stroke cycle for large, high-power engines. During the first stroke, the air inside the cylinder is highly compressed. Injection then takes place. Toward the end of the power stroke, the burnt gases surge from the cylinder and are replaced by the incoming charge of pure air. The first stroke is the same as the compression stroke in the four-cycle engine. The second stroke combines power, exhaust, and induction and completes the cycle. The advantage of the two-stroke cycle is that it allows a working stroke for each revolution and therefore delivers more power for a given engine size. But more power was not the only requisite. There was a demand for smaller and faster engines for certain purposes. Comparatively light engines for submarines had been built before 1920. But the air blast injection system was cumbersome, inefficient, and unsuited to high speeds. There seemed to be a limit to progress in this direction. During the 20s, however, a new system of airless injection was perfected, and the air blast method was superseded. The so-called jerk-type pump meters an exact quantity of fuel which is delivered at high pressure and broken into a fine spray at the injector nozzle. The injection pulse is synchronized with the engine speed. The development of precision airless injection was a landmark in diesel history. Here at last was the opportunity to build an engine which would be light as well as powerful. 10 years of hard work and patient research were necessary before the high-speed engine could go into regular production. These engines are more sensitive than the low-speed types, and a great deal of work on combustion problems and the development of new fuels and lubricants was necessary. Then there were other aspects. For example, trucks, tractors, and small boats fitted with high-speed diesel engines may have to work in regions with temperature well below zero. Practical tests of starting and running at these low temperatures were carried out in special laboratories. This is only one example of the vast field of research and experiment which lies behind the production of the modern diesel. Today, engines of all types and sizes are in large-scale production throughout the world. Medium-speed engines for express trains, small high-speed engines for trucks and buses, diesels for tractors and bulldozers and agricultural machines, miniature engines for model cars and model aircraft, huge double-acting types for generating electrical power and for driving ships, two-stroke and four-stroke engines for 100 uses. The diesel has always had a reputation for efficiency and reliability. Like every other machine, it owes much to the past. To Ackroyd Stewart, whose early work laid the foundation for the solid injection engine. To the pioneers who discovered how to turn heat into work. To the scientists who learned about the nature of heat. To the engineers who have adapted their theories to practice. And to the petroleum technologists who have constantly developed new and better fuels and lubricants. It is through their work and knowledge that we have the modern diesel, the most efficient and most versatile of all heat engines.
So, yeah, thanks, Shell. Shell has a series of different films about petroleum and where it comes from, and even things about pesticides, things like that. This next film, Eat for Health. Enjoy.
for dinner. Is it all right with you? Oh, gee, thanks. Bye.
There's something we all enjoy about staying for dinner. Have you ever thought why? It's because eating with others is fun. People like to come together at meal times. They enjoy each other's company while they're enjoying good food. Mealtime is fun for Frank. And it's fun for Judy, too. But it's different with Ralph.
Will you have some peas, Ralph?
Gosh, Mrs. Scott, I don't like peas.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, how about a baked potato, then?
Well, okay. Gee, Ralph, why aren't you eating? Remember that picture we saw? What picture? The picture with the hand and the 5 groups of food. Oh, that was just schoolwork.
No, Ralph isn't enjoying his dinner much. Maybe it's because of that candy bar he had just before dinner. Whatever it is, Ralph's good time with Frank and Judy is spoiled. The next day is Saturday, and Ralph's tired. But Frank and Judy feel differently.
We're going skating today. Can Ralph come with us?
Well, I don't know. I think he's still in his room. Just a moment. Let me see. Ralph, Frank and Judy are here and want you to go skating with them.
Hi, Frank. Hi, Judy. Hi. Can you go skating with us outside? It's just right. I don't feel like going skating. Thanks anyway. Oh, well. Okay.
That's too bad. Maybe he can go tomorrow. Bye, kids.
Bye.
That's how it's been for quite some time. Ralph just hasn't had the pep that he should have. And now, Ralph begins to wonder why. Maybe there was something more in last week's classwork than he had thought. That hand, for instance, that his teacher had drawn. 5 fingers that point the way to health. What was it now? Bread and butter or margarine, milk and cheese, meat and eggs, vegetables, and fruits. Those are the foods you should eat every day if you want to be healthy. The first one, bread and butter or margarine, reminds him of Kenneth. Why? Because those are energy foods, and Kenneth has the most energy in class. Whole grain breads like whole wheat and rye are especially good for you. If you do eat white bread, make sure it's enriched. Enriched bread has vitamins added to it. Cereals give the same kind of energy and health values that bread does, especially whole wheat cereals and oatmeal. Butter and margarine contain fats. They give you energy in a different way from breads and cereals. Butter and fortified margarine have vitamin A in them, which is necessary to good health. The second finger that points to health represents milk and cheese, and somehow they remind Ralph of the tallest children in class. That's because milk and cheese help the body grow. Milk is about the most perfect food there is. A glassful at every meal is good for you, and with one more, that makes a quart a day. Vitamin D milk helps build strong bones and teeth. And Ralph has decided that it must be lots of milk which has given Linda such a bright smile. Cheese is a bodybuilder too, and there are many kinds to choose from. The third finger represents meat and eggs. And Ralph thinks of George right away, because he's the huskiest and the strongest boy in class. Meat and eggs help the body grow and make it strong. Meat is good for you, and there are many kinds. There's beef, there's pork and ham, there's lamb, fish is good, and so is chicken and other poultry. An egg a day is good for you too. Boiled, fried, scrambled, poached, or any way. Meats and eggs are high in protein, which helps build red blood and strong muscles. The fourth finger, pointing the way to health, represents vegetables. And here Ralph thinks of several children in his class, for there are many kinds of vegetables. Potatoes, for instance, are an energy food, and baked potatoes, eaten with their skins and butter or margarine, have lots of vitamins and minerals, too. When it comes to green and yellow vegetables, Ralph thinks of Wendy, the prettiest girl in the class. And there are so many different kinds. Green vegetables like string beans, asparagus, and broccoli. There are salad vegetables like lettuce, and many others like celery, radishes, and carrots. Carrots are good cooked, too. And so is squash and other yellow vegetables like rutabaga. Cauliflower and cabbage are good, too. Yes, there are hundreds of wonderful vegetables. The important thing is that all kinds of vegetables are good for you, whether they're raw or cooked. They're important for good health, for lots of energy and pep, for clear skin and bright eyes, for shining, gleaming hair, and above all, for that wonderful sense of feeling good. The last finger represents fruit, and there are two kinds. Some are especially rich in vitamin C and help ward off some of the diseases that keep you in bed. They help cuts and bruises heal faster, too. Foods with lots of vitamin C in them include orange juice, grapefruit, strawberries, melons, and, of course, whole oranges. Certain vegetables, like tomatoes and raw cabbage, are also rich in vitamin C. You should have a vitamin C food every day, for vitamin C isn't stored in the body very long. Finally, there are the fruits we eat for dessert. Wonderful fruits like apples, bananas, peaches, pears, plums, grapes, and many others. Nuts make a good dessert, too. They're rich in energy, proteins, vitamins, and minerals. And now, as Ralph thinks about it, he realizes that each of the children he admires depend on all the foods for their health and not on just one food. George is strong, Wendy is pretty, Linda has a bright smile, and Kenneth has lots of pep, not because of any one food that they eat, but because they eat some of all kinds of food. For it takes 5 fingers to point the way to healthful eating habits. And Ralph goes over them in his mind. Every day, eat bread and butter, milk and cheese, meat and eggs, vegetables, fruits, and a vitamin C food. Thinking about all this food has made him hungry. He has a candy bar around as usual, but now Ralph has a better idea of why he shouldn't let candy and sweets substitute for other foods. Sweets don't have the proteins, the vitamins, or the minerals, the bodybuilding qualities of other foods. So for the next few months, Ralph really worked at learning to eat all kinds of foods.
Ralph, would you like some peas?
Oh, I don't want. Well, okay.
Well, what happened to you?
He'd sample everything that was served to him. And even if it didn't happen to be a food that he preferred, he'd eat some of it anyway. At night, he'd go over the 5 food groups and see how he had done that day. After a month or 2 of this, Ralph suddenly realized that a slow change had taken place without his noticing it. He found that eating had become fun. What's more, his health was better and he had more pep. He had more fun than he used to, and more friends. And all because he had learned to eat by counting his foods on his fingers.
All right. I like it. There's lots of different ways that we talk about food. I did a show called Why We're Fat, and it basically took the different food groups from 2 food groups up to 7 food groups, depending on who was describing and who was categorizing the food groups in the period of time. With the 7 food groups, one of the groups was butter or fat, and that was actually a government-produced one about trying to get people nutrition during World War II. All right, so behind me I've got another film set up, and I'm not sure what it says Driveline, so I'm not sure what it's related to. It might be auto related, it might be golf related, it might be some other thing. I'm not really sure. This is where we are kind of trying to figure stuff out. So I have it on the telecine, and so we'll watch it. Driveline.
To make this transmission of power smoothly, a mechanism called a clutch is used. The clutch is a device which allows the driver to engage and disengage the flow of power from the engine to the rear wheels. When the clutch pedal is depressed, the engine is disengaged, so it doesn't drive the wheels. When the clutch pedal is released, the engine is again connected and the car can move. The single-plate dry disc clutch consists of 4 major parts: the flywheel, the clutch disc assembly, pressure plate assembly, and the clutch release mechanism. This is the flywheel. It revolves when the engine is running. It is bolted to the rear end of the engine crankshaft flanges. The flywheel forms the base on which the whole clutch is attached. Holes are drilled into the flywheel to provide a means of mounting the clutch assembly. The clutch disc is made of thin, high-quality steel and consists of a number of springs and compressed asbestos facings. The hub has grooves to match the grooves in the shaft that goes to the
It looks like you can see. I can't know. You probably can't see it. Well, if I move this, let's see what happens. So basically, the film was so. I'm trying to orient myself here. The film was so twisted that it actually came off the core, and so we lost tension, which is probably okay because I don't know. We just did a thing about automobiles. So let's learn about dehydration instead. Enjoy.
Today, as of old, American Indians make their crops stretch from harvest to harvest, using methods of food preservation that were discovered centuries ago. Today, as then, the principles are the same. Every housewife knows that pre-cooking is a first step in food preservation because it destroys the enzymes that may cause undesirable flavor.
The housewife pre-cooks by blanching with boiling water or steam. The Hopis use their open ovens to pre-cook corn by roasting. No kettles, no containers, no pressure cookers, no modern paraphernalia of any kind. Hung in the open, the sun's rays dry them out. And there you have it. First pre-cooking, then drying. Probably the oldest known method of food preservation. But it's the basis of some of the most widely used of modern techniques, the techniques of dehydration. For many years, the dehydration of foods has been the subject of extensive and continuous research. The war stimulated this research because in war, the bulk and weight of foods become tremendously important. So science found new ways to save weight, space, containers, transportation, ways to perfect these featherweight foods without destroying important food elements. Temperature control, synchronization of mechanical handling and chemical reaction, the elimination of bacterial development. Science redoubled its efforts, finding better ways to preserve precious vitamins and nutritional values. Science improved texture, odor, flavor, and taste until, as today, you can hardly distinguish many of the newer dehydrated dishes from those cooked fresh. New methods were developed to extend keeping qualities for indefinite periods and in any climate. Mechanical engineers have developed working models to test out proper air currents for drying the foods. In the laboratories, countless experiments have been run to determine, for example, the exact brine solution that will make possible the quick removal of potato skins without destroying the important food values that lie directly under the skin. Peeling without waste of food or vitamins or minerals. From farms such as this comes the milk to make dry skim. Milk solids without fat, one of the most important dehydrated foods in point of value. From little trickles into quarts and gallons, and from quarts and gallons into a regular Niagara of milk. By the end of 1943, it was flowing into the dehydrating plants at the rate of over 639 million gallons a year, enough to float a fleet of battleships. It takes about 5 quarts of milk to make 1 pound of dry skim. In other words, the milk shrinks down to less than 1/10 its original weight and 1/4 its original bulk. And that's one reason it is so valuable when shipping space is at a premium. From the cows to the plant in a matter of just a few hours, it's handled with going to your table in fluid form. Is the #1 requirement for any food that is to be dehydrated. Milk for the drying plants usually goes first to a nearby creamery to be separated. The cream is made into butter. The dehydration plant serves a number of creameries in its close vicinity. From the tank trucks, the skim milk is piped inside. Some plants handle as much as 400,000 pounds of fluid milk a day, as much as is used by a city the size of Denver. Inside, the milk is put through condensers, where heat removes about half of its water content. Then it's cooled again, flowing over the coolers at about the consistency of cream. The drying units in this plant are oblong cabinets. Inside the cabinets, the milk is forced into fine spray. Around each spray is a continuous blast of hot air, 350 degrees, transforming the milk into a fine powder almost instantly. Dropping through a hopper, then into a moisture-proof barrel, ready for shipment. Milk, with all its vitamins and proteins, all except the fat and the water. It's easy to see how you can get water out of milk because milk is liquid to begin with. But vegetables, well, they're mostly water too. Take carrots, about 90% moisture. If that moisture is removed, it's very apparent that the real food value will pack down into mighty little space and weight. Fresh from the fields to the drying plant in as short a time as possible. That's one of the secrets of a good job of dehydration. "300 tons of carrots a day can be handled at this plant. Every carrot handled individually, topped and tipped and trimmed, every defect removed. Through a pressure washer and water conveyor, up an elevator into a rotary pressure washer, and a thorough rinse. A peeling solution at exactly the right heat loosens the skins in about 2.5 minutes. The skins wash off in another rotary washer. Washed, rewashed, peeled, and thoroughly cleaned, the carrots go over an inspection belt. They are diced by machine. Other vegetables may be diced or sliced or shredded. Spread out in thin, even layers on trays, the carrots go through a steam blancher, quite a refinement in pre-cooking over the old Indian method. Eight minutes at 212 degrees Fahrenheit sets the color and destroys any enzymes. The trays are made of slats or wire mesh so that the heated air forced around them in the dryers will carry off the moisture. Into a primary drying tunnel. As one car goes in, another is pushed out. Fans draw the heated air inside through louvers at the sides. The carrots have lost all but about 25 or 30% of their moisture content. Now into a secondary tunnel where they're kept for 5 hours at a temperature of 163 degrees and at a relative humidity down to 12%. Then out of the secondary tunnel. Over 95% of their moisture is gone. Remember, they were about 90% water to begin with. No need to ship all that water to Europe, Africa, or Asia. What a saving in bulk and weight. Over a final inspection belt and into 5-gallon cans. Each can gets slapped around to pack down the carrots until it holds 19 pounds, or what were 4 bushels in the field. They'll keep in these cans indefinitely, depending primarily on conditions of storage. To make sure they'll keep, this machine exhausts the air from the can and substitutes some inert gas, such as carbon dioxide or nitrogen. The cans are sealed and the carrots are ready for shipment and use. The list of dehydrated foods is long and is growing longer. Citrus juices are being made into powder. Cranberry sauce is turned into flakes and powder. There are other types of dryers, too. With the drum dryer, the liquid, this is tomato juice, is spread on a heated revolving cylinder or drum. Formed into a sheet, like tissue paper, it is carried by a conveyor to a hammer mill, which reduces it to powder. Another type of rotary drum dryer is used for drying meats. Cooked ground pork passes through the inside of the cylinder under blasts of heated air. After most of the moisture has been removed, it is compressed in tin cans for shipment. Ten sides of pork. That's 5 big hogs. And in front, you see the same amount of pork, canned and boxed, after it's been dehydrated. Conveyor dehydrators are a relatively new type. These pre-cooked potatoes are riced onto the conveyor, which carries them through the drying chamber. This kind of dryer has the advantage of providing a continuous operation. 1/3 of all the eggs produced in the United States in 1943 were dried. They are broken by hand, so each one can be inspected. But after that, the process is entirely mechanical. Spick and span and scrupulously clean, this cone dryer has a 24-hour capacity of 4 tons of egg powder. Eggs are sprayed in under pressure. A continuous blast of hot air surrounds the spray and dries it immediately, the dried particles falling down the inside of the dryer. Exactly the same process as is used for drying milk. The thick, soft powder is scooped out at the bottom. Not a hand touches it. Each box holds the equivalent of 1 dozen eggs, and no danger of broken shells. They're good for cakes and custards, bacon with eggs, and omelets, and they're good scrambled. About the only order they won't fill is sunny side up. The boxes are given a wax bath. They'll shed water like a duck's back. Oh, no, this is not some inventor's nightmare. It's a machine developed to help preserve dried foods under almost any conditions of transportation and climate. On every box is the familiar eagle under which millions of pounds of eggs were shipped under Lend-Lease. And what does it mean in cargo space? One ship carries the equivalent of 6 shiploads of ordinary food. Less bulk, less weight. And if you think that's not tremendously important... Mud, rain, shells, danger. But in war, it's mobility that counts. And an army moves on its stomach. 5 trucks of fresh food, moreover, would make a big target. But a little Jeep can carry the same amount dehydrated. No matter on what battlefront, and no matter under what conditions, our boys must have food and plenty of it. But there's no room for bulky packages here. Yet, what a bulk of food a small package can hold when it's dehydrated. Enough for a company. 20 minutes from the time the reconstituted food is on the stove, it's ready for the mess line. That's the stuff that puts heart into a fighter. Cold and wet outside, but mighty warm and good inside. Yes, sir, dehydrated foods helped win many a battle and give hope and life to countless of our allies in war-devastated countries. Dehydrated foods, by no means the least of the contributions of science to victory. And after the war, well, dehydrated foods already have found their way into countless kitchens. Commercial food makers, such as hotels, restaurants, bakeries, candy manufacturers, also use them in tremendous quantities. The busy housewife, if she chooses, can bring home an entire family dinner in her handbag and without making it bulge either. Convenience and variety, two things that are important in the kitchen. No peeling or paring, no washing, no waste. In mighty short order, a dinner. For the housewife, a new choice in the matter of foods, new possibilities in its form and use and convenience. And for the American farmer and the food industries, new possibilities in production, new markets, fresh horizons of opportunity that are always a part of the American way of life.
I can check that gear in a minute, so don't touch anything, okay? Hey! Get down from there! Now! Hey! Turn it over!
What if it bumped that control by accident? You'd be mincemeat by now. What have I told you? You don't work on equipment when the engine's running.
Well, I told him not to touch anything. All right, I guess I wasn't thinking.
You weren't thinking? You mean you'll work on engines and machinery and not think of your own personal safety? Here, shake hands with danger.
Shake hands with danger. Meet a man you ought to know. I used to laugh at safety. Now they call me Three-Fingered Joe. I was young and feisty, never did things by the book. Just let me get my toolbox and I'll take myself a look. I climbed up on a dozier with my mechanic's pride. Said, you can keep it running, friend, while I poke around inside. Shake hands with danger, meet a guy you ought to know. I used to laugh at safety, now they call me Three-Fingered Joe. Although I learned a lesson, I forgot it soon enough. The nicks and burns and scratches showed the young ones I was tough. Till another morning I was grinding on some steel. My other hand got careless and fed my skin into the pool. Shake hands with danger, step right up and say hello. Grinding wheels and metal are what made me real. Three-Fingered Joe. I've seen mechanics burning and I've seen them take a fall just to save themselves a minute. I've seen them lose it all. I've watched them courting trouble, seen them take a chance and lose. They get careless for a moment and spend a lifetime with the blues. Shake hands with danger.
around inside. Shake hands with danger. Walk 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 around inside.
Shake hands with danger and some friends I used to know. Compared to them, I'm lucky to be just Three-Finger Joe.
Alright, so why did I show that? Normally I show a safety film, and then I show that, but I saw that manufacturing process in the diesel story, all those motors and people like touching things, and then of course during the dehydration film there was lots of people amongst machinery, and I was like, yeah, I'll do that. Plus I've been shaking hands with my own danger in trying to get this back on this reel. It's very twisted, which is why it popped off to begin with, and it's kind of a pain. Anyways, so there we go. Thanks for tuning in today. If you like what you saw, you can reward us by buying us some coffee at ko-fi.com/avgeeks. You can also go to avgeeks.com, and there's DVDs for sale there. More than 1,000, it looks like. Although there's probably around 180 DVD compilations. Some of the films you can buy individually. You can also smash that like button. I guess that's vocabulary that we talk about when we're video podcasting, is smashing the like button. So smash it like a bug. We'll be back again tomorrow. We'll watch some more films. It'll be great. Very much appreciate you guys tuning in today. Facebook was being a little bit of an annoying pain in the butt as far as allowing me to not post to some groups and to be able to post to other groups without any problem. It's very strange. Everybody have a great rest of your day. As always, please rewind, love each other, and we will see you tomorrow. Take care.